PS Livestock, Harry Kimtai. PS Correctional Services, Alfred Cheriot. PS Irrigation, Professor Fred K. Sigor. PS ICT, Mr. Jerome Ochieng.
All right, and well, that looks according to the standard. Uhuru's government now takes shape, and those few slots and positions that had been left have now been filled. And well, Bernard, your thoughts on this election, and especially one of the key positions that many were looking out to see who's going to fill it is the DPP, Director of Public Prosecution.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and welcome, viewers. I think, in my view, the position of DPP was very important, and the main people who are angling for that position were Noordin and Letangule. So I think, from the experience they had, all those people had some legal background, and I'm told Noordin has been working as deputy for NIS. So given his investigative kind of experience, yes, I think he's qualified. Although some Kenyans, some people are arguing that maybe it's just a reward for maybe his father being a senator, and he has been Major retired Haji, and he has been, you know, a close ally of President Uhuru Kenyatta, sorry. So he was likely to be considered, given, you know, some of the secrets that government normally engage in. So.
And one of the areas that the DPP or that office has been failing in is investigations. Many of the cases that possibly are put before the courts end up not going anywhere, and the blame game continues, but the main blame comes on the part of investigation. So we are hoping with NIS experience, then hopefully he should be able to do something. Nerima, your comments on the newly elected cabinets?
Yes, I mean, yes. Speaking on DPP, I think what Kenyans are looking forward to is someone who is firm. Like you've talked about, there have been several investigations. We cannot even forget the case of Msando last year, and that's mentioning just very few. We saw lawyers being killed. We saw a lot of people, even when we're talking about police brutality. So there are a lot of issues that he will have to handle. And a lot of Kenyans are looking forward to someone who is firm and someone who shows action. So that's going to be interesting to see. As far as the names being mentioned, I think that we're happy that we're beginning to see people taking their places, because we have been fearing that our government hasn't been quite working, because there have been a lot of positions left open for a very long time. And then we've also had the issues of funding within the counties. So there's been a lot of deadlock. And so hopefully with people taking up these positions, we'll start to see action within the administration. And there's still some time for the public to actually give in their views. I think they have about, 2 weeks to give to the relevant National Assembly committees. But whether those views will be heard is another story. Whether Kenyans actually give,
and especially looking at how the previous even nominations were done. Not that there's going to be vetting, but even those that, it was purely endorsement. But also, before we move away from this, gender balance.
Yeah, I wanted
again.
I wanted to comment on that. Still, there's a lack of gender balance on the names that have been given by the president. And we are also seeing a comeback of some, leaders or some politicians who lost in the last elections. So it's like a cycle, cycling all the, old guys to take up positions, which can easily be taken up by young people who have experience and who have the capacity and energy to deliver the services. So people like Machage, they have been there for quite long. Now, for just to reward the say Kuria community, they have to adopt him and take him to become ambassador. So we are seeing common names like Hassan Noor is there, Ibrahim, Elmi. These are former politicians, and they are there only to in preparation for the next election.
Right.
It's not that they are there to commit themselves to service delivery, but mark timing for the 2022 election.
2022. Now, Nerima, you represent two constituents there that are probably not very well represented. One, the youth, and two, women. Siasa place. Is there anything that possibly you're able to do to ensure that you create the platform for that to change?
Well, we are in discussions in creating a campaign or working on a campaign to push for the gender agenda and basically young people being represented in these such cases. But a lot of times we found that perhaps our leadership doesn't believe in the young people. As much as we talk about we want to make sure that there are opportunities for the youth, we want to make sure that we represent the youth, it basically shows that they do not believe in youth leadership. And so maybe it's a question on perhaps we do not even give young people these opportunities because we do not think that they can carry them through. But that's all false because we have a government that, again, as Benedict has mentioned, rewards. They give people who... Bernard has mentioned that they reward people who have been working with them within the administration. And if we think about it that way, by the time you get to that position, you have to have the financial capacity to actually be able to support a campaign. So already, young people have been kicked out of that criteria. So it's something that's very worrying, but it has to change. And hopefully with the campaign in the next few months, we'll begin to see more and more vocal women and more vocal youth.
Do you think we're making progress in that regard, especially when it comes to gender parity and the youth being included in leadership? Because this is something we've been talking about for a long time. I mean, during Moi's time, it used to be the young are leaders of tomorrow. Tomorrow came and passed, and we still are not seeing them there.
There's a bit of progress because when we talk about the affirmative action, we do see more women, but not necessarily meeting that quota. If we look at last year, the number of women who participated in elective seats increased. Although there was about 14,000 people who went for those seats, there were 2,077 women. So it's a small number compared to the actual figure at large. But then when you look at the year before, that number has increased dramatically. So we're seeing more and more women going for elective seats. It's a small increment, but it's definitely there.
Definitely steps in the right direction. Now, legislators from the opposition leader Raila Odinga's ODM party have endorsed the Friday Cooperation Pact between Odinga and his arch-rival nemesis, President Uhuru Kenyatta, with a call to other NASA affiliate parties to adopt similar resolutions. Murimi Mwangi tells us more.
After failing to reach consensus on opposition leader Raila Odinga's cooperation deal with President Uhuru Kenyatta, the four NASA core principals on Monday sought time to consult members of their respective parties. And on Monday, Odinga's ODM party held its parliamentary group meeting to consider the deal.
I think he gave a very extensive briefing. And if you have any doubt about what was said yesterday, is contained in this statement signed by all the principals. And the long and short of it is that they appreciated the doors of dialogue that His Excellency Raila Odinga had opened.
The members encouraged the party leader to use this engagement to seek justice for the victims of post-election violence as a way of finding a lasting reconciliation in a unit and to make the country one unit.
This as opposition allied coastal legislators also endorsed the Kenyatta-Odinga deal, but with a caution that they were not abandoning their watchdog mandate.
Tutafanya kazi kwa pamoja licha ya kuwa tuko katika vyama tofauti tofauti, lakini tutaweka matakwa ya wale watu wa pwani mwanzo kabla masala yoyote mengine hayajaweza kuebuka.
Kwa kweli ni hatua ambayo imetutia imani na ni hatua ambayo tumeipongeza na tumechukulia kwa uzito sana, na tunaamini ya kwamba ni mambo mapya katika Kenya yetu na ni jambo ambalo litaenda kusaidia ama kuipeleka nchi yetu mbele.
Elected and nominated leaders, together with professionals from Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka's Ukambani backyard, are set to deliberate on the Kenyatta-Odinga deal on Friday, with the Wiper National Executive Council set to adopt a resolution on Tuesday next week.
I'm very optimistic that the two can come together and address issues that have affected us in the past.
After the respective party meetings, the NASA summit is expected to review resolutions of the 4 affiliate parties and issue a joint statement on the roadmap and engagement framework after the Kenyatta-Odinga deal.
All right, and that is the headline on both the Standard and the Nation. On the Standard, ODM backs deal as partners plot move, and the partners here mainly being ANC, Wiper Party, and Ford Kenya. Let's look at the Nation, where the headline is also similar, but in regards to the same story. Raila whips MPs to work with Jubilee. So, to your thoughts, and it looks like, well, somebody said that whoever is the strongest in this kind of coalitions is basically the one who wins the day. Whoever can bully more seems to be the one who wins. And ODM has been seen as the big brother, as it were, of the other parties when it comes to the NASA coalition. So it's either they toe the line or they go separate ways.
Mike, let me start. It's very unfortunate that in this country we really are not sure about what politicians are thinking about or what they are up to. Because we have heard not once, twice about the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, saying that it's not a must that somebody should work with the government for them to get resources. It's upon the government to ensure that resources are distributed equitably across the country. But now he's saying they stand a high chance, or the opposition, ODM, stands a high chance of benefiting 2022 elections if they work with the government. What's this kind of engagement when we know that the role of a government is to ensure that resources are equitably distributed, and you don't have to be in the government for you to benefit. And in that run-up to 2017 elections, we had President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, William Ruto, saying that they now want to create a political environment where political parties are going to join forces, like they break all the parties, affiliate parties, to form one party, one party called Jubilee. Now, if ODM decides to join this one party called Jubilee, is ODM willing to fold itself so that we have then ODM or Jubilee as a party or a coalition? Then we have these other parties, ODM, Onani, Ford Kenya, Wiper, and ANC. So there's and yesterday I listened to the discussion that you had with Edwin Sifuna and Barack Muluka, although I didn't listen to the whole discussion. But from their wordings and from their feelings, you realize that there's a lot of dishonesty between the partners. As in, this one is talking about this one is talking about this, when they are supposed to be speaking in the same language. So there's a lot of dishonesty among coalition partners, and there are some secrets that ODM or the ODM leader or Raila Odinga knows that these other principles are not aware of.
Nerima, one of the things, and I was going to bring that up, that we suffer as a country is dishonesty. And just to quote what Wakoli is mentioning here, the discussion we had yesterday, you'd hear things that leave the electorate wondering, where are our leaders taking us? And now, looking at this particular arrangement that is coming up, do you feel that this is really for the better of Kenyans, or is it more of an individual, what can I get out of it?
I think it's a mix of both. At the same token, we couldn't remain in the state that we were in for any much longer. There needed to be a shift. So in that aspect, it was good for the country. In terms of whether interests involved are for the betterment for the country, that's another debate totally, because I believe that NASA has a test in the sense that they represent a coalition of different people. Their whole manifesto was about cohesion, about having a nationhood, a patriotism. But then within their very own party, they're struggling with that. So how are they going to do that in effect to a whole country? And so that's the test, in a sense where it is possible for a majority party to actually open up the platform for smaller parties and they work together. What it's based upon is the leadership. This is where the technocrats come in. If you have a larger party, then there should be number of sittings for you, and everyone has the equal number of sittings. It's very possible. But if the leadership does not have that goodwill, in a sense, to implement that, that's where we begin to see the bullying involved within a coalition. And then speaking on what you talked about, Mike, about Kenyans grappling with dishonesty.
Right.
Why are we dishonest? Perhaps it's because it is easier to be dishonest than to be honest in this country. Think about it. There you are.
How is it easier?
It is easier.
How?
Because, for instance, let's say you're driving and a police officer pulls you over. You would rather pay the bribe than to go through the legal systems because it is just cumbersome, tiring, and long.
A lot of bureaucracy, and probably designed to delay you and just frustrate you to a point where it makes it easier.
So a lot of times our systems, it seems easier to take the short route than to go the straight and narrow path.
How do we change that? Looking at you as a youth leader, youth influencer right now, how do we change that narrative? We had thought and imagined when we had the likes of Ababu and Namwamba coming up that there was a young generation that was coming up that was going to really transform and change this country. But most of those voices come out very loud but quickly silenced. What happens?
Exactly. It's the system. Because a lot of people have said...
So how do we change this system?
Because instant. Like, it's very... Like, for example, if now the police officer pulls you over, what if they had machines that you can swipe your card immediately and pay the fine and go? You know, there are ways of getting around this. There are creative ways where we do not have to use systems that we've been using for 50 years that we're still using today. And I'm sure that there are many young people who can rectify these systems where they become more convenient for us. And the problem we have with young people when they enter politics and why they get swallowed, again, it's the system. Because you have, powerful political watchdogs who control how parties work, how systems work, and they try and buy you out. If they don't buy you out, they threaten you out. So you find that young people are muted.
They're muted. Bernard, your thoughts on how we can change this system? Because evidently there needs to be a shift. And the reason why there needs to be that shift, even with a coalition like this, as much as on paper, it may be a very good idea, brilliant idea, Kenyans have gotten to a point where there's a bit of mistrust and you're left wondering, what is the need for me? And even when you listen to some of the opposition leaders who are really backing the new arrangement, you're left wondering, are they really speaking because out of principle and because they believe in it, or is it so that they can be heard, and when positions now begin being distributed, they get something out of it?
Yeah, I'd like to concur with what Nerima is talking about on the issue of the system. Our system is very rigid to the extent that as much as young people have this, they have the energy, you know, young people have the ability to influence things, but they are not just given that opportunity. You saw when Ababu was elected or appointed to be Secretary General of ODM, he started crying foul because he was given a position but without tools. Everything was taken away. So he was just there, Secretary General, but he cannot sign, you know, things like checks. He cannot influence decisions within the party. So these parties, one thing that we need to do in our political arena is to dissociate political parties with the individuals. You know, we have put individuals at a level where they are able to control everything. Like now, for example, in ODM, it's Raila. What he says is what everybody, without even interrogating about what the decision that Raila has taken. Everybody will be like, okay, Baba said, Baba is always right, Baba is always on the right direction, and if you don't agree with him, refer to point number one. You know, those are the leaders we have, because they don't see why they need to interrogate the decisions taken by their party bosses. But if we have a generation that stands for something, a generation that stands for ideology, you join a political party because you believe in its, you know, aspirations, you believe in these ideologies, then you'll be able to challenge some of the decisions. But if you join a political party because of an individual, because Mike is there, Mike is my tribesman, Mike is my, you know, my buddy from, you know, long time, then I'm joining this party because of Mike. So will you be able to challenge what the decision takes?
And Nerima, what's the danger? And when we look at styles of leadership, there are different styles of leadership. But it seems in Kenya, it's really whoever can back the loudest. But what's the danger of having such a powerful leader, and I'll use Raila as an example, to a point where he can dare take such a move on his own, and the party will have to follow? Because, I mean, when he was going to meet Uhuru Kenyatta, one would have expected that even within the party, there is a bit of consultation and agreement so that they're moving in one direction. But he is such a powerful leader to a point where he knows he can make that decision on his own, and now the rest have to follow. And ODM is doing the same thing. Yes. They're saying if you don't follow, I mean, you can bail out. Ship in or ship out. You can ship up or ship out.
See, you talk about a ship. So like a political party, the leader is the captain. And with any ship, to navigate, he needs supporters. He needs aides. He needs those who are in charge of seeing the machines. He needs those who are in charge of seeing the direction. He basically needs consultation. So the weakness of Raila making most of the decisions for the political party is that he can be and will be blindsided, especially if he doesn't listen to opinions from his co-principals or from across the board. And that's what gives parties strengths. And they lose their strength once you have an autonomous leader. But these are the weaknesses of democracy. Democracy is not perfect. And Socrates debated severally about it because he felt that in due time, if we do not involve the people in the discussions, he basically said that we constantly have to educate the public on what democracy means and the selection of a leader. When we do not do that, the people will begin to listen to the individual who gives them sweets, who gives them candy, things that they love to hear. That's the person that we vote for, not necessarily an individual who comes with solutions to your problems. It's a person who looks fancier to you at first hand. So that's the weakness of democracy that we're seeing, because we see it in the US also, and how Trump won. It wasn't with plans. It wasn't with agendas that he had for their country. It was just basically feeding off of their fears and relating to the public. And right now, we can see him grappling with that leadership. And he still makes decisions on his own. And America is struggling to see whether they will be able to have
And it looks like, politically speaking, it's not just Kenya, but there is necessity for a leader to be that way. I mean, look at somebody like Duterte. He's also somebody who basically just does everything his way, and it's either you ship in or you ship out.
But I can tell you, with the Raila's decision on Friday last week, it's not that popular among his supporters. There are people who had so much trust and so much, faith in the Honorable Raila Odinga. But if you walk across and talk to some of these young people who have supported him so much, even on social media, you realize that some of them feel disenfranchised, some of them feel hopeless. They think they have a sense of betrayal. They think this leader has been, he's there to use them. Because some of them thought they will continue this struggle. They clamor for, electoral reforms. They clamor for, all those things that the ODM side has been talking about, or NASA. But now all of them are at standstill. You saw the other day the suspension of the People's Assembly. Now, if we had traveled all the country convincing these county assemblies on the need to have county assemblies, however illegally they were, but they had given people hope that now we are going to have powers within ourselves. We are going to decide issues within our counties as the people of Kenya, or as the people of that county. But see what has happened? They have been suspended without even discussion. So what is left for those people who had passed those motions? What happens to those counties? What is going to happen to the papers that, those things have taken either legally or illegally? So it's something that we need to start looking at ourselves and see if our political leaders really stand for anything. And if they do, are those things they stand for the things that the general public, or as a Kenyan, support, or they are there for their own interest.
For their own interest. And we'll have to take a break, but of course something else that would have discussed, but we'll see whether we get time, is the question of, at this point in time, one would expect that the other three principals, Kalonzo Musyoka, Mudavadi or Wetangula, would take the mantle and say, look, we are also in charge and we can do something, but we're waiting to see what, they say that they'll retreat to their parties and their parties will give them direction, but we're waiting to see what that direction will be as to whether they're going to take up the mantle and take leadership and say, okay, Raila, you go that way, we'll remain here as the opposition. But, well,
that's what I support.
That's what you support.
I don't want to see these three leaders joining the government. Let them remain in opposition. Wetangula is the leader of minority. Let him take up the position of the official opposition leader.
We'll give them the time and see how that's going to pan out. But your guess is as good as mine how that is going to go as to whether they'll do that. But there you go. It is now just getting to 28 minutes after 6 o'clock right here on Morning Express. We want to take a short break, but do stay with us. When we come back, we'll also be looking at some of the stories making headlines and also giving you details of what's in your newspapers today. Do stay with us.